Like you said, it's never a dull moment when you talk about backup power. Every time I travel, I get on a plane, you sit down next to somebody, you do okay, what do you do? What's your job? Where do you work? I talk about Generac, and all of a sudden, people are like, well, that's a product we have to have. I think what we've come to find just as Americans, we struggle with power quality in this country, and we have for many decades. This is not a new issue. I think, what's worrisome is just the number of outages that are happening and how long they're lasting. And this is a growing problem, both for homeowners as well as businesses.
Yeah. So how much, Aaron, of your business is, me and Carol out in the suburbs, and how much of it is a company, mid-size or even larger, looking to back up its data?
Yeah, about 60% of what we do is in the residential market. So that would be, out in the suburbs, for homeowners who are looking for a solution for their family, for their property, protect those things. Businesses, this is a business decision, right? With homeowners, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more emotional, right? Just the loss of power and what can happen in your home. Certainly there's things that can go wrong. There's damage that can happen to your house. But largely, that's an emotional decision. Whereas a business, the loss of revenue, spoilage of inventory, some kind of interruption of a critical process, especially as things get more critical with in business with power, the need for that. We see about 40% of our business leaning that way, but that is a very large opportunity for us. And in particular, in some of the bigger applications where we play up in the data center market, it's an incredibly hot space.
Well, dig into that for us, Aaron. Like, how much growth are you seeing in that space? How many calls are you getting about that? Give us an idea of some of the demand and what that kind of gives you an indication of how much more that market could be for you guys.
Yeah, the market for data centers, obviously you guys cover this,
massive.
Very broadly. Yeah, it's massive, right? The capital spending that is going into these facilities and all the equipment that goes alongside of them is enormous. And of course, the power needs themselves are enormous. But you can imagine the backup power, right? These are critical installations. If the facilities go down, we don't have access to the cloud. We don't have access to some of these critical things that are happening in data centers. So every single data center that goes in has emergency backup power. And so we're a relatively new entrant to this market. Our product lines have been smaller. We've served small business and smaller data centers for many, many years. The telecommunications space, and an example, is we provide backup power to a lot of the major wireless carriers out there. So this is a bit of a new space for us. We just entered it in April. We opened up our order book, and we've already booked $150 million worth of new business. We talked about that last week on our call. Mm-hmm. I think that was part of the reaction that you saw in the stock. But we're seeing just in incredible amount of demand for these types of products.
I'm always interested in where you're building these things. And I guess you have a new facility in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, that's supposed to open up space to build those big diesel generators, more of the big diesel generators in Oshkosh. Tell us about your manufacturing footprint, because tariffs are obviously a huge issue these days.
Absolutely. And, we've been a longstanding U.S. manufacturer. We just opened our 6th facility in the state of Wisconsin. We have 7 here stateside. Those 6 facilities in Wisconsin, a good chunk of those facilities are focused on these larger units and on the commercial and industrial products. So those products for backing up businesses. But we're also a global company. We have facilities worldwide. We have a facility in China, a facility in India, Brazil. We have 3 facilities in Europe, and 2 in Italy, 1 in Spain. Have another facility down in Mexico. So, we're a global company, but we see, the demand for backup power growing, really across the globe. But we see what's going on here in the U.S. The addition of the Beaver Dam facility was a critical part of expanding additional capacity for these systems because the growth is it's enormous right now.
How much? So I look at cars all the time. Ford builds more cars in America for sale in America than any other producer. You'd think that would help them avoid tariffs, but in the end, they get absolutely crushed with tariffs on steel, tariffs on aluminum, tariffs on foreign-made parts, tariffs on magnets out of China. And it really makes up then more of a tariff hit than somebody building a car in Japan or somebody building a car in South Korea for export. Do you get hit with those kind of nickel and dime tariffs too?
We do. We use a lot of steel. We use a lot of aluminum. We use a lot of copper in every single gen set. So, in fact, it's interesting you brought up the automotive industry, Matt, because it's a real good proxy for a lot of our input costs. In terms of the components, in terms of the commodities, the things that we're exposed to. So, we have a lot of those similar exposures, and I think just like Ford and others, we're trying to do what we can to minimize the impact of tariffs, but it's difficult. I mean, we've all developed over the last 40, 50, 60 years global supply chains, right? I mean, there are areas of the world where certain components, certain commodities are only available, right? They're just not widely available in other parts of the world. So it's going to take time to recalibrate those supply chains and to try and create a more domestic manufacturing base. And I get it. I understand the need to do that, in particular around things that are associated with defense, maybe pharmaceuticals, things that are truly critical. I'm not sure, when you look at the broader base of things that we're putting tariffs on, that like tennis shoes and Barbie dolls, if that's maybe the right place to do it. I think we've got to be selective and we've got to be strategic in how we use tariffs. But I know the administration's working through all of that with all these different trade partners.
Well, some things, I mean, like magnets or rare earths out of China, we're never producing those here. It's like not an option, not in decades. So
it's challenging.
And you must use those. Are you getting enough?
We are, we're fortunate that we have we have the ability to kind of substitute for some of those super rare earth elements that I think are really critical in aerospace and defense. Not as critical maybe in the automotive, and in smaller quantities they are, but we have access to them today. But of course that's a concern because, as you noted, there are only a few areas of the world where you can get those types of materials and those types of components. So it presents a really, this is a very complicated situation, very complicated conversation. I understand what we're trying to do, but again, I think we've got to be super strategic about how we implement these trade agreements and these tariffs.
We are talking with Aaron Jagdfeld. He is Chairman, President, and CEO of Generac. Hey, a couple of things that you said I want to follow up on. You are mostly selling here in the United States, but you did talk about what you guys are doing around the world, Aaron. Does it make sense to pivot even more so international with the energy storage solutions to places like Europe and China, given that the U.S. policies are now less friendly to something like solar?
Well, those are big markets to begin with, right? So, obviously we want to be successful with our energy products, the storage products in particular, battery products. Europe is a very well-established market. The U.S., is a good market as well. But obviously the policy changes that we've now codified here recently are going to have an impact on the U.S. market for solar and for storage. Now, a lot of the things we're looking at, though, even with the loss of those incentives and the loss of support here in the U.S., the economics of putting a solar system on your rooftop, depending on where you live, as the cost of energy continues to rise, this is one of the things we've talked about. We started out talking today about the quality of power. The cost of power is another element here that needs to be talked about, because as power costs go up and the cost of these technologies around solar and storage continue to come down, the economics, the payback, the raw economics of investing in your own power production on your rooftop or a geothermal loop or however you want to produce your own power and store some of that power continue to improve. And the loss of support, it may impact the industry for a year or two, but it will get back on track because, again, power prices are going up.
Yeah, it does feel like we're headed towards a power war, certainly here in the United States, considering the amount of power needed to really support all the AI that's going on. Having said that, you talk about these loss of these residential tax credits. You've got some new home standby generators, my understanding, is coming to market. Is that going to help offset, though, some of the loss that you are seeing from those residential tax credits, especially when it comes to your energy storage business?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the energy storage side, the loss of the credits, that's going to impact that business here short term. Mm-hmm. Our home standby business, that business it's never benefited from tax credits to begin with. So, it's the kind of thing that if you and Matt out in the suburbs, you want one of these products to back up your home so that, you protect your property, protect your family. There unfortunately were no tax credits available, even though the administration, when President Trump was on the campaign trail, he had mentioned maybe perhaps offering a generator tax credit. We're still waiting on that. We think that'd be smart policy, but we haven't seen it yet. It certainly wasn't in the one big beautiful bill. But those products don't have tax credits. We do have a new product line coming out, which has got some great features and benefits packed in it. But those are the kinds of products that, again, you're really buying and investing in those products to protect your home, to protect your family, to protect your business from a power outage.
No, and what I really meant is those new products kind of offsetting anything you're losing from the energy storage business because of the loss of the tax credits. One other thing I want to ask you about data centers. What about the imminent launch that you guys are expecting of large diesel generations for data centers? What can you tell us about capacity? How much do you guys have for that? And are you investing to boost that capacity? And what is the pipeline of new orders looking like?
Yeah, so the pipeline's very strong. Again, about 150 million already booked in backlog.
Okay.
In terms of capacity, just raw capacity here, kind of globally, about a $500 million capacity number for 2026. So if we get the orders, we think we can have a really great year next year as a way to increase our commercial and industrial business. But we're already thinking about 2027 beyond. This is a market that, again, you kind of have to go back to what do you see in terms of CapEx spending for data centers? Is this going to be is this truly a bubble? Something that in the next year or two you're going to see a retrenchment or a retracement of all of that spending, or is this secular? Right? Is this going to go on for the next decade? And we definitely, like others, believe that this is certainly a longer term trend and one worth leaning into. So we're already starting to think about adding capacity so that we can take that $500 million number to something much higher in the years ahead.
For me, it's the residential products, because this is like
Matt just wants a diesel generator,
it's like
Aaron.
a
I'm just
man
going to lay
cave
it out
toy.
for you.
Well, if you're,
what we do
helpful.
here is
You gotta
just
have it.
what Matt needs to buy, and that's what this
it's
is.
Not even me, but if you're like a hedge fund guy and you just made your first, couple of million, and you're putting up a place in, Millbrook, so you can be next to Mashomick, you want to have a sweet diesel generator out back.
Well, I'll tell you, what people don't think about, right? Like if you think about your home today, and right, so you talk about that hedge fund manager or anybody else who's got a home, the amount of technology that's entered your own home, right? Think about it, like from security cameras to just from control of all of your, a lot of your audiovisual equipment, your lighting, but a lot of the safety equipment that goes in your homes, your security systems. These systems are non-operational when the power's out. We get notes from people who are like, look, I didn't even realize that my garage door wouldn't open. I've got a garage door opener, the power's out. I can't even back my car out of the garage. Everybody, if your power's out and you want to open the garage door, you got to reach up and grab that red handle, right? Nobody wants to do that ever in your garage because you don't know what's going to happen next, right? So people are like, I didn't think about it. I didn't think my sump pump.
Aaron,
what happens when your sump pump?
My husband keeps doing all these systems, like our lights. I have to turn on with like these technical systems and everything. Nothing switches or anything anymore, and it's like I fear for when the lights go out. I don't live in suburbia. I live just outside New York City, but we talk about a generator
there's so
too.
much.
We talk
it's
about
not
a generator
just even the food in your refrigerator, but the deer in the freezer downstairs. And
no, it's not
what happens if you can't heat the pool in the fall? You need to have what is the hottest product, Aaron? What is the thing that the dude at the end of the cul-de-sac absolutely has to have? What are you selling out of?
Well, I'll tell you, it's our 26 kilowatt home standby generator, which can cover your entire house, a good sized home for everything you need. It's basically, if the utility goes down, you don't even notice that the utility is not present, right? I mean, you see a momentary loss of power, and then the generator starts up, and you can basically run indefinitely on a natural gas pipeline, or if you have propane at your home, you're going to be able to last a long time on a generator. And I think the other thing that we're seeing, huge trend, right, is people who have home medical equipment, GLP-1 drugs. GLP-1 drugs have to be refrigerated. Yep. So if you lose refrigeration with medications, certain kinds of medications spoil very quickly. And so, these trends, these overarching trends for, again, a lot of the medical infrastructure is starting to move into the home. We see Americans who are trying to stay independent and stay in their homes much, much longer. But a power outage, when you get older, in your 60s or 70s, and you lose power, it's a very different situation than if you're a younger American, 30s and 40s. It's the indoor camping, you get out the Monopoly, and everybody has fun and it's great until, everybody gets sick of that after about an hour. But if you're older, I mean, the danger that comes from not being being able to regulate temperature, the loss of some of the function of some of these medical devices, just not having the lights operate, as you mentioned, Carol. I mean, those are very serious situations for older Americans, and that is a huge part of our demographic for home standby generators.